Here's the key to our quiz last Friday. We're given here f of x equals x minus 2 times x plus 1 times x plus 3 times x minus 1 times x minus 5 times x plus 1, x minus 1. Notice that f of x has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 linear factors. Notice also that x minus 1 is repeated 2 times, but the other factors occur only 1 time. Now, let's explain the meaning of the zero of this function. The zero of f of x is the value of x that makes f of x equal to 0. F of x is the y value of the function. So if we're saying that f of x is equal to 0, then y must be equal to 0. Therefore, the zero of a function is a point where we have x for the x coordinate and 0 for the y coordinate. So if we are going to graph this point should lie on the x-axis. Therefore, this is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. Therefore, we can call this point the x-intercept of the graph. So another name for the zero of a function is x-intercept. Now explain how to find the y-intercept of a function. Y-intercept is the value of y when x is equal to 0. In symbols, y-intercept is equal to f of 0. So to find the y-intercept, we will plug in 0 to x and then simplify the expression to determine the point 0, f of 0. Now let's find the zeros of f of x. Since we want the zeros of f of x, we want f of x to become 0. So we'll have here 0 is equal to x minus 2 times x plus 1 times x plus 3 times x minus 1 times x minus 5 times x minus 1. If we multiply all these factors and the result should be 0, then at least one of these factors is equal to 0. So if it is x minus 2 that is equal to 0, then x must be equal to 2. If it's x plus 1 that's equal to 0, then x equals negative 1. And if x plus 3 is equal to 0, then x equals negative 3. If x minus 1 is equal to 0, then x is equal to 1. And if x minus 5 is equal to 0, then x is equal to 5. And if x minus 1 is equal to 0, then x is again equal to 1. So these are the zeros of f of x. Now let's find the y-intercept of f of x. Since we want the y-intercept, we want f of 0. So that means we are going to make x equal to 0. So this becomes 0 minus 2, and that's going to give us negative 2. For this one, we'll have 0 plus 1, and that's going to give us 1. For this one, we'll have 0 plus 3, and that's going to give us 3. And here, it's going to be 0 minus 1, so that's going to give us negative 1. 0 minus 5 is negative 5, and 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Then we multiply all of these, and we're going to get 30. So f of 0 equals 30. This is the y-intercept. Now let us find f of 3. Because we want f of 3, we are going to replace x, or plug in 3 to x. So we want f of 3. Okay, so we want f of 3. So x minus 2 becomes 3 minus 2. This becomes 3 plus 1. This becomes 3 plus 3. This is 3 minus 1, 3 minus 5, and 3 minus 1. So 3 minus 2 is 1, 3 plus 1 is 4, 3 plus 3 is 6, 3 minus 1 is 2, 3 minus 5 is negative 2, 3 minus 1 is 2, and then we multiply all of these, and we're going to get negative 92. So f of 3 equals negative 92. Okay, so let's now answer the rest. Convert f of x to standard form. So let's do that. Convert f of x to standard form. Okay, notice that we have 6 factors, right? So we want to multiply all of these 6 factors to convert it to standard form. So one strategy is to take 2 factors and multiply them together. So I'm going to pair them up. Okay, so I want to multiply the first 2 factors. So we're going to have here, okay, x minus 2 times x plus 1. Okay, so here we multiply these 3 pairs of binomials. And so now we will write the product of each pair of binomials. So here we have x squared. Then the x's, we have negative 2x plus x, or positive x. So when we combine this, we're going to have negative 1x. We'll have to subtract, and we will take the sign of the larger number. We have more negatives than positives, so we're going to get a negative 1x. And then we bring down the minus 2. All right, so for this one, we have x squared. Now 3x plus negative 1x is going to be positive 2x. See, we have more positives here, so our answer is positive. And we subtract 3 minus 1. And then we bring down the minus 3. And then here we'll have x squared. Now these two are both negatives. So because they have the same sign, we are going to add them up. So 5 plus 1 gives us 6, but they're both negatives. So when we combine negatives, we get negatives. So negative 6x. Then we bring down the plus 5. Okay, so now we have 3 trinomials. And we want to multiply all of these together. So I'm going to multiply the first 2 trinomial, and after that, the result should be multiplied by this third trinomial. So let's do that. Okay, so now we're going to multiply the first 2 trinomials. So we have x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times negative x is negative x cubed. X squared times negative 2 is negative 2x squared. Now 2x times x squared is equal to 2x squared. And 2x times negative x is negative. Oh, this should be x cubed. And then 2x times negative x is negative 2x squared. 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. Yeah, let's make this 2x cubed. Okay, now negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x squared. Negative 3 times negative x is positive 3x. And negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Okay, let's double check. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times negative x is negative x cubed. X squared times negative 2 is negative 2x squared. 2x times x squared is 2x cubed. 2x times negative x is negative 2x squared. 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. Negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x squared. This is negative 3 times negative x, positive 3x. And negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Okay, so now we can write the answer. So we'll start with the highest exponent that we have here, which is x to the fourth. We'll have here x to the fourth. Now, followed by x cubed. And for x cubed, we have 2x cubed minus 1x cubed. That's going to be plus x cubed. And then this will be followed by the x squared. And all the x squared are negative. So we'll have to add all of them together. So we'll have negative 2 and negative 2 plus negative 3. That's going to be negative 7x squared. And then this will be followed by the x's. And we have here negative 4x plus 3x. They have different signs that we have to subtract. So we'll have more negative. We have more negative numbers. So this is negative 1x. And then the constant term, positive 6. All right, so now this is the product of the first two trinomials. We are going to multiply this result to the last trinomial. So let's do that. Let's set it up and then multiply. So now let's multiply to the last trinomial. So we'll have x squared. So notice that x to the fourth plus x cubed minus 7x squared minus x plus 6 is right here. Forgot to put plus. Okay, so and the last trinomial here is right here in the width of the rectangle. So length times width. So x squared times x to the fourth is x to the sixth. X squared times x cubed is x to the fifth. X squared times negative 7x squared is negative 7x to the fourth. And okay, x squared times negative x is negative x cubed. And x squared times 6 is 6x squared. Okay, negative 6x times x to the fourth is negative 6x to the fifth. Negative 6x times x cubed is negative 6x to the fourth. Negative 6x times 7x squared is positive 42x cubed. And negative 6x times negative x is positive 6x squared. And then negative 6x times 6 is negative 36x. 36. Okay, this doesn't look. So now this is negative 36 x. Okay, last row. Negative 5 times x to the fourth is 5x to the fourth. 5 times x cubed is 5x cubed. 5 times negative 7 is negative 35 x squared. Negative 5x and positive 30 here. So now let us find the answer. So we'll have x to the sixth. So our product starts with x to the sixth. Okay, let's put here f of x is equal to x to the sixth, followed by x to the fifth, and we are going to have negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5 x to the fifth. Okay. Okay, 5x to the fifth. Now, followed by x to the fourth. And you have two negatives, so 7 plus 6 is 13. So we have negative 13x to the fourth plus 5. So we have to subtract the 5 from the negative 13. So that's going to be negative 8x to the fourth. For the x cubed, we have two of them are positive. So we will add the positives and subtract the negative. So this is 47 minus 1. So it's going to be 46. And we have more positives than negatives. So plus 46 x cubed. Followed by x squared. And we have two positives and one negative. So we add the positives, so it's going to be 12. And then we will subtract that from the negative. So it's going to be 35 minus 12. 35 minus 12 is 23. And we have more negatives, so minus 23 x squared. Okay, it's not going to fit. So now this will be followed by x's. And both of them are negative, so we add them up. So let's just put this here at the bottom. Plus 41x. Oh, no, not plus. It should be minus because they are both negative. So minus 41x. And lastly, we'll have plus 30. So this is f of x in standard form. Okay, so now what we're going to do is graph the function. And in order to do that, we want to know how the graph behaves around the x-intercepts and the y-intercept. Okay, so first thing we want to do is put our zeros in this number line so that we can find the intervals that are created. So the lowest here is negative 3. So I'm going to put negative 3 here, followed by negative 1. So maybe negative 1 here. And then followed by 1. And then 2, and then 5. So 2, and then 5. Right. So what happens is there are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 intervals um, formed after we put these x-intercepts. So what we want to do is to find out what is the sign of the function f of x in each of these intervals. Okay. So to do that, we want to select a value for x that we are going to use to plug into x. So in this area, in this section of the number line, we will see -4, -5, -6, and so forth. So we'll pick one of those, and for convenience, let's pick x equals -4. So again, x equals -4. Um, Between -3 and -1, you will find -2. So we'll choose -2. We can choose any numbers in between, but we don't want to use fractions or decimals. So, okay, -1 to +1, we can pick 0. So we'll find 0 in between these two numbers. But between 1 and 2, we can't find a whole number between 1 and 2, so we'll have to use 1.5. Or we can use 1.1, 1.2, 1.9, as long as it's between 1 and 2. Now, for this section, we'll use x equals either 3 or 4, because 3 and 4 is between these guys. So, well, let's use 4. And in this section, we'll find 6, 7, 8, 9. So for convenience, let's use 6. So now what we want to do is find out what is the sign of f in each of these intervals. So that means we need to plug this into our function. Here's our function. So plug -4 into x. So if x is -4, -4 minus 2 gives us negative. So maybe I'll use black. Okay, so again, -4 minus 2 is negative, followed by -4 plus 1, negative. Okay, maybe I'll just put it here, and then I'll just put the answer here later. So here it's gonna be, okay, let me do this first. So I can put the sign on the top. So again, we're plugging in -4. So -4 minus 2 is negative. -4 minus 1 is negative. -4 plus 3, because -4 is bigger than 3, it's going to be negative. -4 minus 1 is negative. -4 minus 5 still negative. And -1 minus 1, no, -4 minus 1 is negative. So all of these factors will give us a negative number when we plug in -4 into them. So we just multiply these numbers. Negative times negative is positive, times negative is negative, times negative again is positive, times negative is negative, times negative is positive. Well, if we're multiplying even number of negative numbers, the result is positive. Okay? So that means f of x is positive in this section. And therefore, f of x is above the x-axis. All right, so let's move on to -2. When x is -2, so Maybe let's erase this for now. Okay. So when x is negative 2 minus 2 is negative 2 plus 1 is negative 2 plus 3 is positive, because you'll have more positives here. Negative 2 minus 1 is negative 2 minus 5 is negative, and negative 2 minus 1 is negative. So notice that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. When we multiply odd numbers of negatives, the result is negative. And then we will multiply that by this positive, then the result is negative. So in this section, f of x is negative. And therefore, f of x is below the x-axis. Now, in this section, x equals 0, we're going to use x equals 0. So let's erase this. 0 minus 2 is negative, 0 plus 1 is positive, 0 plus 3 is positive, 0 minus 1 is negative, 0 minus 5 is negative, and 0 minus 1 is negative again. So we now have 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives, even number of negatives. That gives us a product of positive. And then we multiply by 2 positives, the result will still be positive. So f of x is positive in this section, and therefore f of x is above the x-axis. Okay. Now, in this section, we're going to use 1.5. So we plug in 1.5 to x. So 1.5 minus 2, we have more, we're taking away more than what we have, so the answer should be negative. 1.5 plus 1 is positive. 1.5 plus 3 is positive. 1.5 minus 1, you have more positives than negatives, so it's going to be positive. 1.5 minus 1 is positive. 1.5 minus 5, we're taking more than what we have, so it's going to be negative. 1.5 minus 1 is positive. So we notice we have 1, 2, 3, 4 positives. So that's going to give us a positive product. And then we're multiplying 2 negatives. That gives us a positive. So positive times positive gives us positive. That means f of x is above the x-axis. Okay, now 2 more sections. So x equals 4. When x equals 4, 4 minus 2 is positive, 4 plus 1 is positive, 4 plus 3 is positive, 4 minus 1 is positive, 4 minus 5 is negative, and 4 minus 1 is positive. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when we multiply positive numbers, the result's always positive, and then we multiply by a single negative, so this will be negative. That means the graph is below x-axis. All right, last section. X equals 6. 6 minus 2 is positive, 6 plus 1 positive, 6 plus 3 positive, 6 minus 1 positive, 6 minus 5 is positive, and 6 minus 1 is positive. So all of these are positive. Therefore, f of x is positive and therefore above the x-axis. All right. Now we can start graphing. So to graph, we want to put our x-intercepts or zeros of the function in this coordinate system. So zeros are 2, negative 1, negative 3, 1, 5, and 1, which is already here. So we can think of 2 points lying on top of each other right here at x equals 1. All right, so we can also put the y-intercept. The y-intercept is positive 30, so it's going to be right here. Okay, so now we look at this diagram. We say that in the far left, f of x is above the x-axis. So that means that f of x is starting from from infinity here, so going down towards x equals -3. Oh no. Okay, so it's going to go down and hit -3. Okay, and then it says here that f of x will go below the x-axis. So that means it has to cross the x-axis. Okay, so it's now in the negative territory. And then it has to go back up so that it can cross the x-axis at -1. So now it's at -1. Then after -1, the graph goes above the x-axis. So it has to cross the x-axis again, going back to the positive territory. And it's getting closer and closer to the y-axis. So it's going to hit the y-intercept right here. And then it needs to come back down, because it has to touch x equals 1. Okay, so it has to go back to 1. Now, after 1, the graph is again above the x-axis. So that means it's not going to cross the x-axis. It's not going to go to the negative territory. It has to go back up. So it has to stay in the positive territory. So there's nowhere to go but to go up here. But then it needs to come down because it needs to touch x equals 2. So there's x equals 2. Then after 2, we know that the graph is below the x-axis. So this time it's going to cross the x-axis and go to the negative territory. So now it's at the negative territory. But since there's another x-intercept right there, it needs to go back up. So it has to go up and cross, and not, we don't know if it's going to cross. So let me just fix this. Come on. All right, so we'll have here. Okay, and then now after 5, the graph is above the x-axis. So it's going to cross the x-axis, go to the positive territory. Now, there's no more x-intercept on this side, so that means that the graph will just keep going up. It will not come back to the x-axis. So it just goes up. So we'll put the arrow here. And also in this side, there's no x-intercept after -3. So if it is starting from above the x-axis, that means that going to the left, it will just keep going up. Okay, so this is the graph of f of x.